This is by Reverend Maggie Barker and the Lord. And I want you to know that whenever I use the term Lord, I'm actually using it from a metaphysical perspective, which is law. So when people pray to the Lord, they're praying into the law. And what we know is that whatever you put into the law comes into form. How does it do that? Well, anyway, that's to contemplate. I was looking for some Noah jokes, and there are a lot of Noah jokes out there. There really are, because I'm going to actually talk about the flood. But I want to do a Missouri exercise. Missouri. Was born in Missouri, and that's the show me state. Okay, and so Lynn is going to pass out some little pieces of paper that I want you all not to look at first. I know it's hard, but do not turn them over until I ask you to turn them over. It's very important. And one of the stories that comes out of the story of Noah. Echo? What? Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay. One of the things that we definitely get from the story of Noah and the flood is that Noah was an obedient man. He was obedient to the Lord. And one of the things that I have learned is that faith is important. Obedience is more important. So does everyone have their little paper? Okay. I would like you to turn it over and read it one time as quickly as you can. Don't try to make a lot of sense out of it. Just turn it over, read it one time as quickly as you can. And then turn it back over. Okay. Doesn't make a lot of sense, like a lot of life. But now what I want you to do is I want you to turn it over, and one time I want you to go through it, and I want you to count the number of the letter F, as in Frank. One time through, quickly as you can, count the number of the letters F. And if you've seen this before, you've done this before, cooperate. Okay, have you done that? Has everyone done that? Is anyone awake? Yes? Okay. So how many F's did you find? 3, 6, 4, 3, 5, 2. Wow. Okay, let's do it again. One more time. As quickly as you can, count the number of the letter F's, as in Frank. And then sort of look up so I'll know that we're all there. Just one time go through it, okay? Okay, so now, how many F's? How many people found 3? How many people found 2? How many people found 4? How many people found 5? How many people found 6? What's the truth? Do you want to exchange with someone who got a lower number? You can try that? No? Are you sure? Should we do it again? I mean, we haven't come up with, how many F's are in this little the question, do you all have the same thing? Yes, you do. And that's why I was going to suggest that you exchange them to make sure, okay? Would anyone like to make a little wager on this? No, I'm sorry, that's okay. So let's do it one more time. Everyone, count the number of F's. You can even use your fingers if you want this time. How many? 3. How many? 5, 6. 6. F as in Frank. The word Frank is not in there. And I said that to prejudice you. Well, there are 6. What? Yes, there are 6. The problem with something like this is that your subconscious mind does not usually register the letter F in the sound of. Your subconscious mind spells it O-V, of, not O-F. The point of this is to help us understand that we do not see with our eyes. We do not hear with our brain. We do not feel with our hands. All of our senses are tools that we use, okay? But what we actually are seeing with and hearing with is our I am and what we believe. So, the more you do this, the more someone is convinced there are only 3 F's in this, the harder it is to unconvince them. And so I just want you to understand that, because when we start looking out in the world, there are a lot of ofs, and we don't see the F's. Now, this week's topic kind of interested me, and when Carol asked me what topic did I want to do, I thought, well, my life is about improv comedy, and one of the I do that on the sideline, by the way. One of the things that you learn in improv comedy is there's only one response, and it's the response, yes. You watch it. In an improv comedy, whatever the situation that's proposed by one person to another, they have to say yes, or the skit's over. Okay? So we have to say yes. And so this is not improv comedy, but we'll see where it goes to. So the title of it was How to Be Kind in a Cruel World. And essentially it was asking, how do we as religious scientists live around but not in the nightmare? And I'm wondering who wrote this. So I looked it up on the internet, and there was a lot of talks today on this subject. Which to me just seemed kind of odd, because as a religious scientist, I don't see the world as cruel. That's not one of my F's. And kindness, of course, is something that we do because we are, not because of something. But when we look at today, when you look outside, what do we see? We see a lot of conflict. You agree with that? There's a lot of conflict, a lot of confusion, strife, struggle, fear. It almost seems like the times have switched. I heard Bob Dylan singing, the times are changing. And the only thing I am aware of in that song, the times they are changing. The only thing that I'm aware of is that song goes on forever, because the times are always changing. Always changing. But it seems that somehow we are at a critical junction. And it's not a critical junction of nations and economies and jobs and factories and all of that. It's a critical junction of consciousness. And for about the last 20 years, somewhere around there, we've been going through a period of global cleansing and planetary cleansing of consciousness. And that's all that's happening out there. The corruption, the whatever you want to call it, it just is an isness, and it's a part of what's bubbling today. And it's sort of like the same kind of thing that was bubbling according to the story of Jesus, when he was born. He was born into the world of darkness. The Jews were imprisoned, they were slaves, they were overtaxed. They weren't treated with respect. And you go back even further than that, and there are many times in the Bible we can find out where, there's a lot of strife, a lot of difficulties, a lot of obstacles. When we look at the Bible, it's important that we look at it, at least today, symbolically. It is a historical document. It is a document of theology. And it's one of the greatest books of psychology that you will ever find. You can literally find the solution to every problem in the Bible, because it's how you read it too. But to read it symbolically, because when we do that, we are also reading about our own evolution. So if you wonder, how do I become more like Jesus when I'm in the world? Do the things that he did, say the things that he said, think the things that he did. How do I do that? Well, reading the Bible will give you literally the instructions. It's really fascinating. And then, of course, it talks about what you do later. So we all begin in the garden. And what I've discovered Metaphysical Bible is something that I just love, and I've studied forever and ever, and I can't shake it. I find a good teacher, and I cling to them forever. But the most radical idea about the book of Genesis that I heard was from my current teacher, who said that when we were in the garden, we really didn't even have bodies. That the story of creation in the beginning is actually the story of the forming of the light of consciousness within us. And that we actually don't really get a body until we leave the garden. And we had to leave the garden. Does everyone know we had to leave the garden? Yes? God was not punishing us because God does not punish. Whoever interjected that into our understanding of God, they should be voted off the planet. Okay? God makes no mistakes. God has no regrets. But we're on our spiritual evolution. And so at the time of the flood, in the book of Genesis, the world was pretty wicked. The people were pretty wicked. There was a lot of corruption. And essentially what had happened was we had grown to a point of materialism. Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a little few of the little begats here, so bear with me. The Bible has a lot of begats. And if you read the begats and you look at the symbols behind them, and one of my primary references on this is Charles Fillmore's Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, you can understand how we got somewhere. So if you want to know how Noah got to be Noah, you have to understand, where did Noah come from? Well, of course, Adam was the first man, okay? And we're just going through the male lineage today, okay? We'll do the female lineage another time, okay? And Adam represents, the first stirring, the first vibration of man, the first idea of man. And of course, that is when Adam, walked in the garden with God. There were no bodies involved. But when they left the garden, they had children, because Spirit wants us to leave that place of perfect spiritual essence, that place we all want to get back to, and we have to go into the world so Spirit can delight in its creation. This is all of the stuff that's going on in our world, all of the stuff that happens to us is delight in the playground of the Lord. Well, Adam and Eve had two sons. The first one was Cain and Abel, and the second one was Abel. And Cain represents the physical form. We're now starting to get physical form. But he tills the soil, and he works very hard, and he likes to possess and own things. The physical world likes to own things, to possess things. Where Abel represents the mental, the invisible part. And Abel is a harmonizer. And of course, you know the story that Cain killed Abel. And this is symbolic of when we slay, when the body or the physical, material attitudes and beliefs we have, when they demand all of our resources of mind and soul, it reduces our existence to mere material living with no higher aspirations. That's sort of where Cain was at, and there was no pleasure in living. And he was jealous. And of course, after Cain killed Abel, he went to the land of Nod. Have you ever heard of the land of Nod in the other literature? Peter Pan. The land of Nod is a land of confusion. It's a land of fearfulness. It's a land of bewilderment. Okay? And so this is all part of our growth, to go to the land of Nod. So I used to think that life should have no obstacles. There should never be any problems. And then I learned that the way we grow, the way we evolve, especially spiritually, is through obstacles, through overcoming obstacles. It's also the way that we bring more light to the planet. Because each time you pray for your world, for your family, for your situations. You're bringing the light of that healing in for everyone. So out of the land of Nod, well, let me back up again. We have to remember that anything that we think we have lost is never really lost. In the Bible story, the loss of Abel allowed Adam and Eve to have another son by the name of Seth. And I'm taking this because Seth is the lineage that we'll actually get to Noah. And Seth is more of a spiritually realized person. Cain had a son named Enoch, which is a new state of mind. We go to this place of confusion. Okay, if we're smart and we know what to do, we can open ourselves up to a new state of being. We don't have to stay in the land of Nod. Enoch was a man, though, who walked with God, which meant he prayed and contemplated, just like Noah did. Enoch's son Methuselah represents strength, power, and health. Now, these are all the qualities that come down to Noah. And I mention this because for Noah to do what Noah needed to do, he needed the spiritualized mind, he needed the vitality, he needed the strength, he needed the power, and he needed the health. There's a story that Methuselah gave his grandson a seed that Noah planted, and after it was watered, it grew a forest, which was where they actually got the wood to build the ark. Now, there's another begat in here. We'll be done with the begat soon enough. Lamech, that's how I'm pronouncing it, was the son of Methuselah. And Lamech represents that vital something in us that keeps us overcoming. Have you all wondered why you don't just call it quits? Because there's something in you that won't let you. Because although you think this is your life, it's not. Your life belongs to the Lord. Your life belongs to all of us. Noah represents a place of rest, calm, and more importantly, equilibrium. We have any active workaholics or recovering workaholics. Equilibrium is a very important word here. Because when things are out of balance, what happens? They naturally get into balance somehow. Situations correct themselves so there will be balance. And in the world in Noah's time, there was wickedness all over the land. And basically what the metaphysical interpretation of that is that the imagination of the human became corrupted. And so it needed a reset. And the story of the flood, which we all have floods. Floods are when things, come upon us or, we're inundated with negative things. It's important to understand that there's a way to deal with that flood, a way that we can return to the state of equilibrium easily. Now, there are flood stories, creation stories all over the world. I started looking them up. After 125 pages, my printer stopped, and I thought, whoa, what is this? There are even about a dozen flood creation stories in the land of enchantment, in New Mexico. All various tribes, various religions, all have their stories of flood. And it's the same thing. It's about the purification, about the cleansing of the corruption that we get if we stay focused in the material world. As I heard Jack speak, first time I came here, I've known Jack for a long time, and we're really going to have fun in those classes, folks. But he said, why are we here? We are here to spiritualize the material. We're here to spiritualize the material, not to have the material drive us. Now, when a flood comes upon us, the direction is to build an ark. One of my favorite comedic performances was by Bill Cosby, when he'd say, The Lord said, Noah? Yes, who is that? No, I want you to build an ark. You want me to do what? Right. Now, I don't know how many of you walk and talk with God. I finally learned that I don't need to be afraid of auditory hallucinations because they're not. I asked my teacher, because I started talking to the Lord all the time, in the shower, out of the shower, all the time. She assured me, no, that's what you're supposed to do, because that's how you stay in that guidance. And that's what Noah would do. But it's time to build an ark. And what the ark is, it's a place of refuge, of protection. It's an affirmative state of mind, and it's constructed through prayer and affirmation and uplifting activities. Now, there's something here that you need to know. The Lord did not tell Noah to build an ark once it started raining. He started building in the ark well in advance of the rain. Because if you wait for the problem to come up, you just may not get the ark built in time. No. So on a daily basis, we have to be building our ark and making sure it's maintained, because when trouble comes, that's where we need to go. And if we have, if we're using affirmations, if we're praying, if we're reminding ourselves of the truth, this is the substance of the ark that will give us the protection that we need as the world changes. With Noah, he had to take 2 of all the animals, although I guess there's controversy. Was it 2 of the clean and 7 of the clean and 2 of the unclean? I mean, I guess this was some sort of battle. Anyway, they decided it was 2. That's why you hear the animals 2 by 2. As Bill Cosby would say, 2 mosquitoes, male or female, how do you tell? It was a huge thing. And of course, you need to understand that these flood stories, some of them are regional floods. Some of them are global floods. Good chance that this was a regional flood, okay? Because if it had been a global flood, there would never have been an olive branch for the dove to bring back, because olive trees don't do well in salt water. So there were higher peaks. The whole earth wasn't covered, but an area. So Noah had to take the crawly critters, the bugs, as well as the beautiful horses. Just like we have to take our clean ideas, our uplifting ideas into the ark with us, but we also have to take those that are unclean. Because it is in the ark where our ignorance, and that would be the uncleanliness, our ignorance is healed. So you can't just sort of like push it out. You can't say, well, I don't think that. This is sometimes what happens to people when they begin to pray. They pretend they don't believe what they believe, and they try to pray their way out of it, but it doesn't work, because you always have to start with where you're at. If you believe in a limitation, there's no problem with that, because you can dissolve whatever limitations need to be dissolved if you believe you can. Noah took with him his family, and there's always these stories of 3, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And that's, again, spirit, the physical, and the mental. The agreement, though, that Noah had with his sons was that the intellectual man aspect of us dwells under the protection of the spiritual, but not as a servant, but as a brother. The animals, the unclean animals, need redemption, and they're just, like I said, our ignorance. The ark was a huge, huge ship, probably bigger than an ocean liner. I wonder why they haven't found it, although there's a lot of information about where it landed at. But the design of the ark had one window. There was one window at the highest point in the ark, because when the flood came and the ground was covered and all the unbelieving neighbors, went under, it was not for the inhabitants of the ark to see. And the lesson also was that if they wanted to know what was going on, all they could do was look up. They had to look up, not look down. Remember the story in the Bible of Peter where Jesus has coaxed him out of the boat and said, yeah, come walk over here. And he's doing real good until he realizes, oh my God, I'm on the water. And as soon as he realized that he was doing something he shouldn't do, he began to sink. So the ark had one window. It was up. And for us today, part of what that is we have to find that window that we look to rather than looking through the keyholes on the side that look into the world with its corruption, its wars, its whatever. You might say, well, now that's not very realistic living. Well, I'm sure Noah took a little bit of ridicule building an ark in the desert. And so we might take a little ridicule if we begin to, what's the term, set aside what the world sees. If we become indifferent to it. Now that doesn't mean that we don't do what we need to do to take care of ourselves and the world. But the indifference comes into, oh, this is the end of the world. This is the worst thing that can happen. This is conflict and it's going to be there all along. That is not what we need to be doing. We need to be looking up for every solution and seeing it in our world. I remember one time, and I didn't do it very often in ministerial training because I was really good at avoiding children's church. And I might still be, but we'll see. The jury's still out on that. And I remember I papered the walls, all the walls of the children's church, and I asked them to draw what would world peace look like? What would it look like? What does peace look like in your world? That is what we want to focus on. Because the more we focus on it, the more we will see it change. One of the stories of the ark is that, yes, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but it took 155 days for the water to recede. And we have to wait in the ark. We have to rest. We have to be confident that this too shall pass. And we have to wait until the water subsides. What Noah did, first off, when he began to see blue sky and this, he sent out the raven. And what the raven represents is our sense awareness and our sense thoughts. So what he did is he sent out the raven, looking at what's going on in the material world, and all the raven did was fly back around and round and round and round and round the ark. Sort of like our thinking when we have a problem. It goes round and round and round, but it doesn't show us dry land. He waited about 7 days, and then he sent out a dove. And the dove, it represents a spiritual idea. And the first dove didn't come back. He didn't panic, waited 7 days, sent out another dove. Came back, but didn't have anything. The third time, the dove brought back the olive branch, which was the message that it was going to be safe to leave the ark because the waters had subsided. And of course, we know that olive branch we consider that like a peace offering. And in a sense, it was a peace offering from the Almighty. If the Almighty can give us peace offerings, it gives itself peace offerings in that. And with that peace offering, there was also a covenant that was made. Once the ark landed, the place it landed on a tall mountain, and it was considered a sacred place. And the first thing that Noah did was he built an altar. Well, what does that mean? Well, when you give thanks for something that you've experienced or you've received, it's important to do something tangible in the world. To give thanks in the world. That may be, supporting something like the center here. It may be, something creative that you do. But it's important to do something tangible and to give thanks. Most of us go from one problem to the next, and we forget when the answer to the prayer comes, we need to stop, build an altar, and give thanks. and also to references sacrifice. And I'm not sure sacrifice is the greatest word that people like to hear. What we mean in this story about giving a sacrifice is letting go. It's sort of like one of those last steps of our treatment work. When we release it, we sacrifice it, we let it go. And we let it go. And if we have to let it go, we let it go again. One of my teachers was a guy by the name of Joseph Murphy. I don't know if any of you know Joseph. He was a master, I feel like a relic. But he used to say that, when the devil comes up again, and by the way, the devil is lived backwards, L-I-V-E-D, when he says, when the devil comes up, you say, "Get thee behind me, Satan," just like Jesus did. And if it comes up again, he says, you do it again, you say, "Now get thee behind me, I've already told you, get lost." And that's what we have to do when that thinking wants to come back to negate the spiritual truth that we've discovered. Remember, the flood is a good thing. The water purifies. It also moves blocks. It makes its way. And Noah represents the way of non-resistance. It's part of the correlation with Noah and the flood. Water is non-resistant. Sometimes we think of that as very passive, but if you take one look at the Grand Canyon, you'll understand how powerful the water is. But what came out of this story of Noah is that the Lord made a covenant with man. Sounds like a commitment, doesn't it? No one fell off their chair. Okay, that's good. We make covenants all the time, and if you haven't made one with your God, it's a good thing to do. But the covenant was that man would never be destroyed by water again. And a sign of it was the rainbow. Do you know where the rainbow begins at? Inside of you. I used to go rainbow chasing. I had a scientific boyfriend. He used to do a certain way with the sun, and you could find the rainbow. But you are at the beginning of the rainbow. The rainbow is within you. And if you think of that arch of the rainbow, that is your connection to the ever-abiding Spirit that always prevails. Our negative experiences are blessings in disguise if we know how to build an ark, and we can follow the example of Noah, which is to be obedient and non-resistive. Non-resistance is sort of like improv comedy. And I find improv comedy is a pretty good philosophy to live with, especially in such a serious world. Through this process, we're all evolving. So whatever the things that come up to you, the concerns, the obstacles, don't be self-critical. Rejoice. Rejoice. People look at me like I'm crazy, because if I get a demonstration of an illness, I say, "Thank God." And I say, "What do you mean, thank God you're sick?" I said, "Thank God it's an opportunity to heal and to prove once again that healing is possible." So let's just take a moment now and close our eyes if you want to. And let's take a deep breath, and as you exhale, allow yourself to go to that inner place, that inner ark of peace, wholeness, confidence, infinite possibility, our infinite source. And take another deep breath. And this time allow yourself to sink deeper within. Reach deep within and allow that Spirit to touch your heart, your mind, and your body, to revitalize, restore, renew. And we know as we speak each word now, and any word, we send it forth with the power of the word to create. We do the job of Adam. We name things, and they become those things as we name them. And so right now, from the authority in my being, and with the authority of your being, we declare our world is good. There is no need to be concerned. Our only concern, if we need one, is to know and realize more and more how much God loves each of us, how much God wants for each of us, and how in the blessing that God gives us, we give to the world. And so it is. I do invite you all still to watch the news once in a while, but to do it with a prayerful attitude, to lift it all up, and to see it in a different way. For years, I have been going, well, most of my life I've been going to New Thought churches, but for the last few years, every time at the end of the church and we sing, "Let there be peace on earth," I have seen the Iraqi people singing and dancing in our midst. And over time, I've seen that go from our group to the 6 o'clock news. It's wonderful.